Hey, what's up, Dean? Super Performance. We are at the shop with a dirty phone. Got Jonathan's truck. I got the new handle in and went to put it on, and there's no inside latch assembly. So that's about the last thing other than charging the AC. We got our sticker on there, but I gotta get that piece. I gotta find it. I think it's like a dealer only item, so I gotta find that. But we have a new one, and this is another somebody else's build. It is an On3 turbo kit. I think it's like an LS2 motor. It's definitely a Gen 4. It's got some FIC 1000s, got a Holley Terminator X, and then all of the butchering. It's got Mac valves, which I labeled vent, fill. Then it's got a manual boost controller that is sourced off the blow-off valve. It's got line lock, all kinds of good stuff. You got your fuel pressure regulator, sheet metal tap, one screw. Just got a -6 feed in the rail, factory rail, which I feel like that's going to be our big limit, is that factory rail. But it kind of wants to do other things. We have alternator belt that's being eaten alive because the alternator is completely misaligned with, I'm not sure whose bracket that is. I can't really read it. I don't know whose bracket that is, but the spacers are too small, so I'll have to make some spacers. I gotta make that spacer there, and then that spacer right there. Then we got the steam port with a crimped hose down to the heater hose. It's not really the way you do it. So I started looking. He brought it in just to get the Mac valves working, the trans brake working. So initially what I always do is pull the file, and the Terminator is on X2 build 50, which is, like, I believe is one of the original builds. We are now on X3 build 110. So I pull the file. You can't pull it with X3, you got to pull it with X2. I go through, I look at the file, and it's just, they have all the AC stuff enabled, fans to run when the AC is on. You can see there's no AC compressor anywhere in the car. So, and just crazy stuff. They have all kinds of advanced tables built for ethanol sensor, which, going through today, here's the plug. There's no ethanol content sensor. So I have to figure out a way to control the fans. Because it has a lockup converter. It has a FTI Turbo 400 with a FTI lockup converter. He says it's a lockup converter. I'm gonna believe him on that. So want to be able to utilize that because that'll help him drive down the road. The car has 411s, really way too low of a gear. So he's struggling on the quarter mile. It has stock rocker arms. There's another issue with RPM limit. So he's gonna have to ultimately change the gear. He knows that. He wants to change the gear. He wants to do a new turbo kit. This turbo is just a little too small for what he wants to do. He wants to try and get the car into like the 8s. So been kind of tinkering, looking through. I looked through the car the other day. I kind of just glanced over everything, and I said, okay, let's correct this. Just the inputs, outputs, make everything work. Well, then, I start looking, and the main Holley harness was run to the fuse box So you had the power here, and the ground was up here on this stud with a nut on top. That is probably the worst thing you can do to one of these systems. It clearly tells you in the directions that these main cable, the main harness, positive and negative, needs to go directly to the battery. The battery's in the trunk. I am hopeful that this harness is long enough because it's coming through the firewall, so I have to rip it out of the firewall, but I can get it back to here. Now, mind you, it has to come down across the rocker and through here, kind of the blue Camaro, Jesse's Camaro. It was the same thing. He tucked his battery over here in this little compartment, and we went off of that. There's relays back here that I believe are for the fuel pumps, is what he said. So yeah, there's just things. Yeah, so I've pulled this harness off, which then leads to the inputs and outputs. If you're not using them, you know, it's fine to leave them long, but at least fold them up neat back here. These were strung all the way across, which is fine, you know, to string them all the way across in a harness, but it just gets confusing. The biggest issue I have is when you do this. So this is the plug side of the input and output harness. This side here is the side that comes wrapped up in a bag so that you could tie all your wires into. Somebody went on the back side of this harness, try and get in a little closer, and stripped a section of wire, twisted this wire around it. I have to track down where these two wires go, but then they did it over here to grab 5 volts. So I think I know where this is going. I think this is going to the dome pressure. And to me, this is just, I haven't opened this, but I already know it's going to be the same thing because I already found more wires that are the same way. This is not how you do it. This is how you potentially blow somebody's car up, catch it on fire, you know, do a million different types of crappy things to somebody's car. And I know the shop that did this, and they're just fucking butchers. Yeah, so not how you do that, not how you want to do that, not how you do it. Just don't do it. If you don't know what you're doing, just don't do it, period. Like, stop making everybody's life miserable trying to find all these issues. And I already know I could probably go through this entire car and find 19 other issues. They did the same with the flex fuel sensor. So they came over here. I don't even know what's going on. You got this wire, it's just dangling, but then right here, what do you think's underneath this tape? And this goes to the MAC valve. So you're feeding, I assume you're feeding 12 volt because this red wire goes down and into the fuse box, which I wonder what else it's trying to feed. It's so hard to do one-handed. Just tug on it because why not? Yep. So here's a 12 volt feed. Did the same thing. Stripped the wire. Just did that. So it drives me nuts. Then he came. You got so much shit. This is the line lock. You've got this much wire for the line lock. Then you got a male-female spade that's open. This is the positive side because the negative side goes to that stud, which is fine for this. It's a dirty ground, but I would rather trigger the ground side of line lock rather than the positive side. Feed a fused 12 volt to the solenoid, you know, like a ignition on, and then have your button trigger the ground. So I'll correct that, correct this. I'll put some Deutsch connectors on here. I'll get rid of the ethanol sensor because they're not using it. It was enabled in the tune. It was no table configured. They just enabled it. It almost looks like whoever built his original tune, which I can pull up. This is my tune now that I'm going through and building a whole new tune because it wouldn't convert over correctly. So this is, let me shut the light off. Terminator X V2 Camaro. Okay. 15 PSI. I put Reed. The tune was labeled Camaro 15 PSI. I added Reed. But it's crazy to me. Here's our pin map. We have AC kick. I actually took the AC kick out, but you have flex fuel sensor, fuel level. Why do you need fuel level when the car has, because that burns an input, right? But the car has an autometer gauge that functions. So what do you need fuel level for? He's not running the bigger screen, so you don't need that. Outputs, you've got all of these. Turbo, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I believe that's his wastegate dome sensor. Then you've got AC shutdown. There's no AC on the car. Electric 2, electric 1. So there's 2 outputs just for the fans. One then you got your boost solenoid up here, TCC lockup up here. They're not assigned. Like, what are you doing, dude? Advanced table. You've got number of gears, 1 TCU input. There is no TCU. It's a Turbo 400 on a Terminator X, not X Max. Then you got table 1, enable table, flex fuel mod, fuel flow multiplier, flex fuel sensor. So I believe this is standard. This table is standard, and you can make adjustments to it, whatever you want. But then you come over to table 2, and you've got turbo, boost offset, duty cycle. Okay, cool. So you're trying to do, and you did nothing with it because there's no sensor. So it just, I don't know what we're doing anymore. I really don't. They had, what was it? Yeah, the oil pressure sensor is the Holley 100. It's not, it's a GM sensor. Fuel pressure, Holley 100. It's not, it's some other, I don't even know what brand that sensor is right there. But it's not a Holley because a Holley has a sticker on it. And there's no sticker on this one. They have the same for the dome pressure, so that needs to be a custom sensor, and you have to scale it. Will the Holley sensor read? Yes. Will it read accurate? No. And I already know that just from changing my file into the car, keying it on, and it's showing 2 different pressures. On the gauge it shows 1, in the system it shows a totally different pressure. Even the coolant temp sensor was way off for whatever reason. It was, and I think it was the firmware version, because as soon as I loaded mine with the same sensor, it lowered the temperature. I compared it to Jonathan's truck. His truck's was 83 degrees. This was reading 99 degrees. So it's a big difference, and they've been sitting about the same amount of time, not started. So big difference. I loaded my file in, and now it's reading 88 degrees. So it's way closer. What else was there? Ignition. So you got engine parameters. They're running VE based. That's fine. Whatever. You got your FIC. All that goes in. Ignition parameter. Custom. Configure. LSX 58 tooth. Cam sensor. Single pulse. What are we doing? Not sure why that's there when you can literally select GM LSX 58 tooth. You come over to the car, and this had me question, is it a Gen 3 or a Gen 4? And if you look right down there, you can see the cam sensor plug right down there. You can kind of see the white with the black. So it has the sensor there. Now, is it single pulse, 4 pulse? I have no idea. But I have to fix everything. So I'm gonna go through and do as much as I possibly can on the car. He needs it for Friday. I think he needs to pick it up Friday. Today's Wednesday. So I'm gonna do as much as I can right now. Today and tomorrow, I'm gonna get as much of it sorted that I can. And fingers crossed everything works. So we'll get back. Okay, so I got the main Holley harness pulled all the way back through, and then I put it behind the kick panel, and let me open the door. This trim wasn't even screwed down, so I was able to get it behind there, up in here, all the way to the back, and there they are right there. So they're actually longer than we need, which is good. But this funny cable here, this weird negative cable, you can see just wiggles, and that's how you undo it, like that, and then you tighten it. But that's not good, and there's nothing to attach the negative directly to. So I got new terminals. I added in a couple of screws, some of like the trim screws with the weird beveled washer heads. So I got one there, one there. I didn't put one here, but I put one there. He could finish it off. I'll leave the screw there for him, because I am finding too many things. So I undid this mess, and sure enough, both wires wrapped. So this is a 5-volt, which you can see I'm just twisting the wire off basically. And then this is a input, white with a black input, which would be white with a black would be A13. So under his file, A13 fuel level. I don't know. So not sure why he's using that as a fuel level input. Then on this side you have it going to nowhere. The red feeding 5 volts, I assume, is going to the factory sender. I'm not sure actually what is going on here, because you got 5 volts coming back to the purple. Then you have the black one that is actually connected to the input. Huh. So it does nothing. Unless they have an output going to, which it doesn't look like they butchered anything up in there. I only see 2 outputs. No, 2 outputs are for the fans. Let me just look. Holy moly. That's inputs, outputs, fan, AC shutdown, and turbo. So I gotta look. B10 is gray with a black, goes nowhere. B3, gray with a green. I think that's, no, gray with a black and gray with a green are going across to the boost solenoids. Okay. Confusing. There's another input that's open, has nothing on it. Yeah, so, yep. We're just going to take these off. And then I will de-pin these plugs, and I'll put some heat shrink on it, because I have no idea what this person did. So it doesn't do anything. It's a loop to feed 5 volts to the back. So maybe that's how the odometer gauge is working. I have to double check that. But then I came over here. I undid all this. I undid the flex fuel sensor wire, the manual boost controller, the T to the blow off valve. And then I undid the pipe because I found more. So I put the 90 straight in. Notice that the intake temp sensor is a push-in fitting, not what you want with a boosted application. You want the threaded bung style, but we could address that later. Then I look down there and you could see the dome pressure sensor. The heat sleeve is literally melted off of it and melted to the plug. So I would assume that doesn't work, but bigger, I wanted to swap the line lock and the boost solenoid to a fuse. So I popped the cover off. This is this cover here. So it has injector 2. There's no wire. Possibly it was depinned. I highly doubt it. It probably wasn't there. Injector 1 is there. Engine sensors is there. Starter, ABS, PCM, all of those are in there. Engine control, AC cruise, all of that is there. So I picked the box up and that's what I see. Is a wad of solder, sorry, with this red wire that went up to the MAC valves. You can see those two were cut from here. I just did that. But this wire came down to there. And if you look really close, you see a tiny little black wire. So that goes up to a relay. Okay? And you see there's 3 thick wires in that relay and 1 thin one. The thin one is a negative trigger. The 3 thick ones mean there's a bit of amperage coming out of that. This is the cover for that one. And that is fan 3, I believe it says on there. So it's feeding a fan, but I don't think there's a fan 3. Unless that's the blower, which we don't need that. But you can also see that the black wire is actually encased in it. So they wrapped the red around the black, the pink, and then soldered it. So luckily it's wiggling in there. It didn't short out. Like this is, I'm so lost on that. But that's another one that I'll have to depin that wire, clean it all up, fix it. There's not enough wire there for me to connect. So, and I'm not 100% sure which one is the output on there, but fix that one. And then I'm gonna try to find one of these output wires, and I may add a pin into here. I think I have a bunch of these so I could stab one in. I always save them when I depin them out of cars, but I just have to find one for the MAC valves and one for the roll control, basically. And then I'll take this wire off that for the ground, and I'll feed this one into the steering wheel so that it triggers a ground, and then I'll have to go in and swap the ground on the steering wheel. Where there's a 12 volt coming in, I'll have to swap it to a ground. I also noticed the intake is a 4 volt LS3 intake. So you see how it's really low compared to the throttle body. You see that big hole? Well, that big hole goes to, I believe, the IAC valve. I believe, I don't know for sure where it goes or if it goes somewhere, but I mean, it's a big hole. And then, like, holding my light up, that left hole that you see up there actually goes to this side of the throttle body. You can kind of see the port way down in there, and that is this 90. It comes on every one of these throttle bodies because it usually loops back to the valve cover, but this was stuck in there. So you talk about a boost leak, like, yeah, it's definitely a boost leak. And then I'm not sure where that one goes. I'll have to shine a light. Oh, I have a light. So if I shine a light in there, I don't see it on this side. Okay. So maybe that one doesn't go anywhere. I don't know. That'll be a little better. Yeah, I'm not seeing a light come through. So maybe that back one doesn't go anywhere. But this side one definitely needs to be plugged. And I always plug them on all the turbo cars, even the naturally aspirated ones, I plug them. It's super simple to do, but that's a big reason why probably the car couldn't make boost. I don't know, but we're kind of getting deep into this. I also looked at this mess here, and he's got this orange and black wire spun off, and it comes back through here, and then into here. So he's taking the fuel pressure sensor, ground and 5-volt reference, and bringing it over into this hobbled up mess, which you can see there's strands of wire for the 5-volt. Actually, I cut off 2 wires. I don't remember what they went to. Yeah, I don't remember what they went to. I think they went to nothing. So I don't know why you would go all the way down when you're pulling from here to go to right here. And you have stuff that comes across, like a battery cable, a vacuum line. Just go from there to there. Like, it's not that hard. I appreciate the heat sleeve and everything. I mean, you could have maybe made it a little neater, but it is what it is. I checked the vacuum routing, or the plumbing for the wastegate and the boost solenoids. All of that seems to be right. I would assume this one's not threaded in, being that it's stuck out so high and that one's not. So I'll check that. Just deep in it. The other issue will be the catch can. You can see it comes off the manifold right there. That line comes across to 75, which I assume that's going to be a check valve. But goes into the catch can, then comes out and goes to the back of the valve cover back there, which, if that's not a check valve, it'll just pressurize, and there's nowhere for the engine to evacuate any of the crankcase pressure. That's good. Nice and loose. So yeah, we need to address that. And how do you plug that? Other than, well, I guess I could cut the plastic hose off, put a rubber cap, clamp it, something, and then try and dig my arm back there and find the PCV valve, which I see it, and it's covered in oil. Looks like it's on, but it's definitely covered in oil, like it's been blowing oil out of it. So I could pull all of that out. This catch can is not, so it's right and it's wrong, because it's not vented. For me, this style catch can on this style car should have the vent, which these are all the same. These are cheap little Amazon ones, and it's literally just this fitting. You take it out, and then they have a barbed fitting with a little air filter that sits on top of it. It's kind of like the one that I put on Jonathan's truck. It's actually the same one, just different color. So need to try and sort that out. For now, I may just reroute it and put a nipple in it and just tell them, like, get a filter. But I got the battery cables, so I'm actually going to go back there, disconnect the battery, because I'm messing with this stuff. I don't want to short something or do something. So I'll be back. So here's a better look at this wire here. Both wires wrapped up and then soldered in, which I can almost get enough of the strands off. Let's see. Almost. Well, I can't get them off, but I'm going to get rid of all of that, put a piece of heat shrink on the pink, and stuff them back up into the fuse box, and go from there. Yeah. Working through it. I'll get through it. Hopefully, end of the day tomorrow. I'll be in very good shape. I know I'll have the fans left, because that sensor won't, or that switch won't be here till tomorrow. So I know I'll have that left, but I think I'll be able to get everything else wired up, done. Battery cables will be all done. At least if I can get the car back to running, minus the fans, which, you know, I could just ground temporarily, so they just turn on and run. And then I can switch the car and Jonathan's truck, because Jonathan's truck is just more cosmetic stuff, the AC, the tailgate. So I could swap those, get his car up on the lift, check the clinking noise underneath. He said he broke the bumper. It feels like there's no support underneath, so I may make a strap to support the bottom of the bumper. And swap the trans brake wiring, or extend it into the vehicle, whichever. Look for the lockup. I got to look for the lockup, which that might be those two wires going down. Those might be for the lockup converter, but I don't know. I don't know where those two wires go. It's weird to me. It might be a starter, safety. I'm not sure. So I have to find those. But anyways, I'm gonna end this one off. Appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of new videos. Leave me a comment. Have a good day.